All right, let's talk about Brian Schottenheimer and what's quickly becoming a defining stretch in his time with the Dallas Cowboys. Because after that press conference, phew, Cowboys fans didn't just get answers. They got excuses, deflections, and a whole lot of "we'll see." And while some of that might be expected from a coach trying to steady the ship, the tone and content of this media session left a lot of people wondering if Schottenheimer really gets the urgency of what's going on. Now, let's be fair for a second. Schotty came out swinging, defending his defensive coordinator with everything he had, refusing to throw anyone under the bus. Loyalty is cool and all, but when the defense is getting cooked week after week, it's hard to stomach that kind of cover-up. At some point, you got to stop shielding guys and start holding people accountable. And right now, that level of accountability feels real surface level. From the jump, Schottenheimer tried to set the tone. Short answers, stern face, no-nonsense attitude. But that energy started crumbling as soon as the real questions hit. He acknowledged that the team wasn't physical enough, admitted that they got dominated at the line of scrimmage, and even said, straight up, that the Cowboys got out-schemed. All true. But instead of laying down a plan for how things would get better, it turned into this convoluted mess of coach speak, hypotheticals, and breakdowns that seemed more like excuses than solutions. It's one thing to say your team needs to be more physical. That's obvious. But how? Where's the intensity at practice? Where's the fire on the sideline? Where's the discipline on Sundays? He said they're going back to fundamentals. Cool. He said it's not about the scheme, but about executing it better. Okay. But man, how many times have we heard that before? At what point do we stop blaming execution and start questioning if the people doing the executing or installing the plan are even the right ones? Then you get to the defensive breakdowns. Schotty said it himself. Linebackers aren't reading keys, safeties are in the wrong spots, gap fits are a mess, and communication is downright chaotic. And when asked if he believed the guys on the roster could get the job done, he didn't blink. He said yes. He said the solutions were in-house. Again, cool. But do the results back that up? Because this team just got bullied up and down the field, and we've seen this movie before. Big runs, blown coverages, soft edge containment. It's becoming the Cowboys' defensive brand. And let's talk about this whole hero ball thing. Schottenheimer pushed back hard on that idea. He didn't like the term. He didn't want to label it that way. But what else do you call it when guys abandon their assignments trying to save the day on their own? We all saw it. Defensive linemen shooting gaps they're not supposed to. Safeties chasing ghosts in the secondary. Guys playing out of control. That's textbook hero ball, no matter how you want to repackage it. It was also kind of wild hearing him break down how they reviewed the game film. He said they didn't watch it in sequence. Instead, they grouped all the first and second down runs, then grouped all the first and second down passes, trying to find patterns. That tells you everything you need to know. This isn't just a bad day at the office. This is a team searching for answers. And when you're 6 weeks in and still trying to find out what went wrong, that's a problem. One moment that really stuck out? When he started talking about confidence. He flat out said confidence is low right now. And how could it not be? This is a defense that's been giving up chunk plays left and right. A defense that, even with some playmakers on the roster, can't get off the field in key moments. He kept saying it's not a personnel issue, that it's an execution and communication problem. But if the same mistakes keep happening with the same players at some point, don't you have to consider the possibility that it is a personnel issue? There were also a few moments that just felt tone-deaf, like when he defended Donovan Wilson being put in deep coverage, an area where he struggled badly, or when he talked about how well the defense did in certain phases, even though they got pushed around most of the game. And the weirdest one? When he said this game didn't come down to that fourth down play, the one where the defense just left a man wide open, like that wasn't a massive, critical moment. Schotty also tried to sprinkle in some optimism, saying they've got a whiteboard full of solutions and ideas, that guys are competing for playing time, and that tweaks are coming. But the truth is, these tweaks should have happened weeks ago. And as much as he wants to frame this as a growth and evaluation season, Cowboys fans aren't trying to hear that. This is not a rebuilding team. This is not a development year. This team is supposed to be contending. Right now, they're just trying to keep their heads above water. He also had some strong words about being solution-oriented. That's great. Coaches should always be trying to fix things. But sometimes, fixing things means making tough calls. Benching guys. Changing responsibilities. calling out leaders. That part still feels missing. Instead, we're hearing a lot of "we'll be better" and "we're close" and just a few tweaks. Meanwhile, opposing offenses are lighting this defense up like a Christmas tree. And man, some of these reporters were ready for war, asking if the defense would be better with certain players back, asking if confidence in the scheme is waning. One even brought up how the defense looked when other stars were still on the field and the results were the same. And Shoddy, he danced around it, politely, but still danced. This was one of those pressers where you finish watching and think, okay, but what now? Because if all we're doing is talking about eyes and leverage and footwork and trust, but the product on the field keeps declining, then something is broken, and it's not just communication. And that brings us to the elephant in the room, Matt Eberflus. Shoddy stood by him hard, said he's a good coach, said he's been there before, said he's not panicking. But if this defense doesn't start trending up fast, that unwavering support is going to come back to bite him. Because as much as fans appreciate loyalty, they appreciate results more. And when loyalty starts looking like stubbornness, the leash gets shorter and the temperature rises. And the thing is, Cowboys fans aren't just frustrated by the losses, they're frustrated by the way this team is losing. Because it's one thing to get outplayed, it's another to look confused, slow, and disorganized while doing it. You've got safeties getting caught out of position, linebackers late on reads, and defensive linemen getting moved off the ball like they weigh 100 pounds. And Shoddy's response to all that? We need to be more fundamentally sound. Like, yeah, coach, no kidding. But we're 6 weeks in. This is basic stuff. One of the biggest takeaways from this press conference is how Schottenheimer seems to be caught between two worlds. On one hand, he wants to ride for his guys. He wants to show trust in his staff, stay loyal, and keep things steady. But on the other hand, the product on the field is screaming for change. And the more he leans into loyalty and patience, the more it starts sounding like denial. And when that denial starts costing you games, fans lose trust real quick. He said repeatedly that the problems aren't schematic. He said it's not about the XS and OS. It's about the fundamentals, the discipline, and the focus. But here's the thing. Fundamentals are the coach's responsibility. If players are blowing coverages, missing tackles, getting caught in the wrong gaps, that doesn't just reflect on the players, that reflects on the staff. And instead of throwing up his hands and admitting the system might need a serious overhaul, he's out here talking about watching film differently, changing the way players read triangles, and shaving 10 or 15% off the playbook. 10 or 15%. That's not going to cut it when you're getting dragged for over 150 yards on the ground and giving up explosive plays left and right. You don't fix that with tiny adjustments. You fix that by demanding more, by coaching harder, by holding everyone, from the lowest man on the depth chart to your top assistants, accountable. And look, there were moments in that presser where you could tell Shoddy is feeling the heat. He kept talking about communication, about guys needing to be louder on the field, needing to trust what they're seeing. But that just shows how deep the cracks are. When your defense is struggling to even communicate the basic calls before the snap, it's not just a player issue. It's an organizational one. It means your messaging isn't getting through. It means your leaders aren't stepping up. It means your team isn't aligned. He brought up how they reviewed tape differently this week, looking at all the early downs together instead of watching plays in sequence. That's the kind of thing that sounds smart in theory, but when you're using that as a headline solution, it just reinforces the idea that they're still searching for answers. That's not encouraging. That's concerning. Because the problems are staring everyone in the face, and instead of saying, yeah, we're not tough enough, or we need better players, Shoddy's out here talking about board drills and body leverage. He talked a lot about eye discipline, about shrinking what players are asked to read. That's fine, but that's something you work on in training camp, not mid-season. The fact that it's even a conversation now means this team wasn't prepared. And when you combine that with the fact that they've been losing the physical battle at the line of scrimmage, it paints a picture of a team that's not just underperforming, but maybe overestimated what it really was to begin with. And while Shoddy tried to stay positive and say help is on the way, talking about injured players getting close to returning, that doesn't solve the core issue. Plugging guys back in won't matter if the structure is still flawed. If your linebackers are still slow to read. If your safeties are still reacting late. If your corners are still getting flagged because they can't keep up. Health helps, sure, but it doesn't fix foundational problems. What was also noticeable, and a little troubling, is how Shoddy tried to sidestep any real criticism of the defense. He kept it real surface level, saying things like, "We didn't play to our standard," or "We didn't get off blocks." That's fine once or twice, but over and over, it just feels like he's shielding guys from accountability. The best teams, the ones that bounce back from bad losses, are the ones where coaches come out and say, "That wasn't good enough, and here's how we're fixing it." Instead, Shoddy spent a lot of time explaining why things went wrong, not what they're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again. He also seemed a little too dismissive about the idea of personnel changes. He said, sure, guys will compete for snaps, but he made it clear he still believes in the current group. That's admirable in some ways, but also a little naive. Because sometimes, belief just isn't enough. Sometimes the tape tells you that certain guys just aren't getting the job done. And when you ignore what the tape is screaming, that's when you start losing the locker room and the fan base. And man, it was painful hearing him talk about needing to be perfect. Like when he said, "If we go 4 for 4 in the red zone, we're not having this conversation." Bro, that's the problem. You shouldn't have to be perfect on offense just to stay in games. That's not sustainable. That's not how playoff teams operate. If your defense is so unreliable that it forces your quarterback to throw for 3 touchdowns with no picks just to have a shot, that's not a winning formula. That's desperation. He tried to say Dak's performances weren't being wasted, that everyone has things to clean up. But let's be honest, they are being wasted. The last few weeks, Dak has looked like a top-tier quarterback. He's making plays, avoiding turnovers, moving the offense. And what does he get in return? A defense that gives it all back in a matter of minutes. That's deflating. That kills morale. And if it keeps happening, it's going to fracture this team. Even when talking about his own offensive play calling, Schottenheimer admitted there were calls he wanted back. He mentioned the screen they ran after the big defensive stop and admitted it wasn't a good sequence. At least there was some accountability there. But that level of reflection didn't seem to carry over when it came to evaluating the defense. And that imbalance is hard to ignore. You can't hold one side of the ball to a high standard and let the other side slide because you like the guy running it. Before we roll on, subscribe to Cowboys Wire News, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Your support keeps the Dallas Cowboys updates coming. Tell us what you think in the comments. It seems like every NFL season brings its share of drama, but this time, the noise isn't coming from the field. It's coming from the broadcast booth. Over the past week, a storm has been brewing after veteran commentator Joe Buck allegedly made some less than flattering remarks about the Dallas Cowboys during a private conversation that somehow found its way into the public ear. According to multiple whispers from inside the sports media circle, Buck reportedly criticized the Cowboys for being overhyped and living off their past glory. The comments, though never officially recorded, have sparked outrage among fans of America's team and reignited long-standing debates about the franchise's relevance in the modern NFL. Social media lit up almost instantly. Some fans defended Buck, saying he simply voiced what many have thought for years, that the Cowboys' national spotlight often outshines their recent achievements. Others accused him of bias, claiming that a broadcaster of his stature should maintain neutrality, especially when it comes to one of the league's most polarizing teams. This isn't the first time Joe Buck has found himself at the center of controversy. Over his decades-long career, the play-by-play icon has often been accused of favoring certain teams or disliking others, depending on who's listening. Still, few topics ignite as much passion as the Cowboys, a team equally adored and despised across the country. While Buck has yet to publicly respond to the rumors, insiders say ESPN executives are quietly monitoring the situation, wary of any backlash that could affect upcoming broadcasts. Whether the story fades away or explodes into something bigger may depend on how Buck handles the next Cowboys game he calls. For now, the question lingers in the air. Did Joe Buck really take a shot at the most talked-about team in football, or is this just another case of NFL gossip spiraling out of control? Either way, the Cowboys have once again managed to do what they do best, keep everyone talking. That's a wrap from Cowboys Wire News. For breaking Cowboys updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Tell us your take in the comments.